Hi, I'm Amy Rodman, and I will be giving you an overview on Outschool. So let me share my screen and we will get started. So Outschool is a community marketplace of online classes for kids. That's how they advertise it. It is for ages 3 to 18, and you can teach any age range you want. You just need to limit it to 5 years within a class. So for instance, one of my more popular classes is 11 to 15 years old, or I break it down into smaller increments for the younger kids. I do 6 to 8 or 7 to 10, 8 to 10. It depends on the class. So I am a teaching artist with our local museum, the Southern Alleghenies Museum of Art, and they work in conjunction with the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts, where I go into other classrooms and team teach with teachers, not always art teachers, sometimes classroom teachers. I've done science and English, but it is where I get to come in and do a special project or help with something that would be too big of a job for just one teacher. If it's a large class, and sometimes depending on the materials we use, it is really nice to have two adults and we throw ideas back and forth off of each other, bounce ideas off of each other. And I love that part of my job. However, when I first quit teaching in a public school to do that, I only got 1.5 residencies in before school shut down. So that meant I had to do something very different very quickly. I couldn't go into schools if they weren't open. And I had looked into Outschool the summer before because I had contemplated quitting my job and was still in the deciding process. And I thought that would be a really good alternative. And I let all of the fears of what do I do? How do I do it? Just kind of paralyzed myself, and I didn't do it. But whenever school shut down and I was at home and I no longer had a salary, I had to figure out something really quickly. And Outschool was a great alternative, and now I love it. And it's one of the primary ways I make money. I'm also what I would consider a creative retreat leader, where I teach adult classes, and I have done the workshops that are shorter more recently, but we have some really cool travel plans and weekend things planned, and just have been waiting for things to open back up and to feel safe to do that again. And I can't wait to get that all started. So in addition to teaching art, I have 2 teenagers, a husband who runs his own business. So he's been working from home long before everybody else has. And I teach some pottery wheel classes in our local studio in town. And I just love to read and to hike and to travel, though I just finished a hiking trip that was a little above my pay grade. So for today, what I want to go through is just a very brief overview of each of these things. And if you want more in-depth information about anything, reach out to me. I will make sure that I answer whatever I can for you. But we'll go over the application process, how to set up your virtual classroom if you haven't had to do that already for other things, the tech requirements that you need for teaching on Outschool, about course development, because you get to develop whatever type of class you want. There's no curriculum to follow. You choose everything. There's 4, kind of 5 types of classes to offer, about their communication system and how to communicate with parents and the students. You'll see my teacher dashboard. So you'll see a little behind the scenes of what it looks like to see the stats. The main things that I've had to troubleshoot with students when you're in the meetings, and then a little bit about reviews and how you're paid. So the application process, if this is something that you're considering and you haven't applied yet, it has changed a little bit since when I had to apply, and it's just a little more in depth. They want to really get to know you and who you are and make sure that they are hiring teachers that are up to their standards, but you don't have to be a teacher. You can be in love with a certain subject and be an expert in that, and you can teach that. So it doesn't have to be academic necessarily. They have classes on everything. My son took a class from a pilot. My daughter took a class from a chef. So it can be literally anything under the sun. They are going to require that you create a short introductory video, that you fill out your profile, which is basically like their application, and then you have to apply for a background check. So when you are doing the video, it doesn't have to be long, but what they want to see is just who you are, your personality shining through, you describing what types of things you will teach and how you are an expert in that. They want to see your classroom setup. So what you see behind me is what my students see. And then give a brief overview showing your teaching style. So that could be in the form of you just giving a really quick mini lesson or describing how you would teach something. The classroom setup isn't something to worry about as far as how elaborate it looks like. This is what mine looks like behind me right now. When I first started teaching, I actually hung up curtains that I stole from the one window off to the side in my living room because I'm in my garage. So I had to find a place to teach where, since everybody was home, it was quiet. My house echoes, everybody else was on Zoom. It was the only place that I could kind of isolate myself and turn into my own studio or office. So what you're seeing is one wall that is fixed up, and I see the garage all around me. So your backdrop is important, but it can be something as simple as hanging curtains behind you and it just looking nice and clean. The lighting is important, but again, I'm in my garage, so I'm making do with what I have. So I have the overhead lights and I have lights on each side of me because the ring lights glare off of my glasses like crazy, and I did not have the extra money to pay for a bunch of stuff. So I found 2 task lamps for each side of me, plus an old lamp that was in our basement from my daughter's room. And that's what I currently use. And my father-in-law is the best man ever because he is building me an office in my basement behind me. And lighting has been one of the top concerns or discussions, I would say, of what type of lighting I want to put in there so it's bright enough. And then when I say about camera views, you want your laptop to be lifted so it's in front of you so that you're seeing yourself more from a straight on view, that it's not looking up your nose and it's not seeing the ceiling. And if you have more than one camera view, that might be because you want to see the tabletop or any surface that you are demonstrating something on. So a lot of people use their phone. I happen to have a document camera, so I hook it up to an older laptop that I had. So that works out for me, where they're able to see my hands and I'm creating, and I'm able to spotlight that for the students. So I always introduce myself to the students where they're seeing my face first. But then when class gets started, then I'm able to say, okay, I'm switching over to my tabletop, and I hit the spotlight for students or for participants, whatever it says, but I'm spotlighting that screen then so they can still see me in the gallery view if they want to. And I'm still talking through that other device, but they're seeing my hands and seeing what's happening since I'm creating art with them. And then accessible supplies. So that means you're never away from the camera during class. So everything is around me. They're not able to see this, but I have a caddy and I have bins and I have my folders and everything that I need to reach. I have a drawer underneath my desk. So I'm able to pull everything I need right from my seat. The tech requirements that Outschool has is, of course, a stable internet connection. You don't want to become glitchy. And if that does happen, which occasionally it has in my house whenever everybody was home, we learned very quickly that nobody else could stream anything. We have a decent internet connection, but I did not want them to be on videos or playing video games or streaming music because that did affect my internet connection. Better yet, if you're able to plug into like a hardwired connection, then you're not going to have any of those problems. The Zoom integration happens where you download the Zoom app or you download Zoom to your computer so that you're able to use Zoom, but they provide it for you. You do not have to pay for Zoom. It is a green button in the classroom that you just click start meeting and your class pops up. So if you're using 2 devices, you're able to click that, just log on to your profile, your class that you're teaching, and hit the green button on each of those devices. And it takes you right to the classroom where everybody's going to be logging in. Your video, you just want to make sure that everything's clear, that they're able to see you and whatever else if you're using those 2 devices. And then with audio, you want to do a little test. I was able to log into Zoom with my daughter on a different device in a different room, and we tested out what it sounded like when I was just talking through the computer audio or through the couple different headsets or earphones that we had with mics, and just determine which was the best quality because I want my students to have a good experience. I don't want it to sound tinny or, like echo for them. And then we talked about the multiple camera views a little bit. And if you are teaching with just one device or you create a presentation like this, you want to be able to share your screen. So you just want to know where those screen sharing capabilities are and how to work them, how to work chat, letting the kids in and out of Zoom. So you just want to practice Zoom if you haven't used it before, but it was a pretty easy learning curve there. When you're developing a course, this is what I think is the most fun. I have just ideas out the wazoo. I have so many ideas written down that it's going to take me years to develop all of them because I have different ideas for different age groups. Because you're able to teach whatever age you want, whatever subject you want. You want to just figure out what you're passionate about and what you want to teach. So I have developed classes that I don't teach anymore because they weren't as fun as I thought they would be. I thought that some of the lessons that I teach in person would be perfect for this, and some of them have been, and others were like, they're way better in person. So once you kind of find your passion and find your niche and come up with these ideas, more usually just keep flowing, and you are able to submit them for approval. So first, in order to get that approval from Outschool that they feel that you're teaching a quality class, you are given a template to fill in, and I'll show you that in a second here, where you are basically outlining and describing what you're doing, and you want it to be as specific as possible because this is what parents see and what the students see and how they're determining if they want to take your class. So this is a little behind the scenes here. I usually teach drawing and painting classes, and for this summer, I wanted to try a 3D material, so I'm doing an air dry clay camp. And so the template just looks like this, where they have the title and it tells you what to do step by step. Choose a catchy and descriptive title. So I'm putting that in here. It tells you how many characters are in each thing, because in your class description, it does require a certain amount, because if it is too short, they feel that the parents are not going to get a clear view of what you're going to be doing. So you do want to give a lot of specifics. You are going to just give a 1 or 2 line sentence to just tell the parents what you're doing, but also change the wording to tell the students what they're doing, because there's a search option now for students to be looking for things. And then you are going to summarize what you're doing. You're choosing what subject it would fall under. So whenever they're searching, they have different categories that they can click, that they're looking for something in the arts. They're looking for a specific academic subject. So it depends on what category. There's a drop-down menu that you can decide which one it best fits into. And then they do give you a guideline of what you should include, of how you should describe your class. Like, what are you teaching? What exactly will you be covering? How do you teach? Like, what kind of teaching style do you have, or how do you plan on structuring your class? All of that, so that parents can gauge that as best as possible. And you are going to develop a picture, and it's optional, but if you want to develop a video for the parents and or for the students, so they can see you and you can describe it, or you can show some different things that you'll be doing during the class, that's also just an extra thing that you can do to bring students to you. So the types of classes, I said there are 4 types of classes, but technically there's 5. And the reason I said 5 is because of the example I used, and I called it a camp. So because summer is approaching, you can teach multi-day classes as a camp. And I'll explain that in a second, but you're going to want to start out with a one-time course. So this one-time class is where you see these students once. They are signing up for a class that is 30 minutes long, an hour long, whatever it is that you set the time to be. And from beginning to end, you cover everything that's in your class description, and you may or may not see those students again. That they sign up just for that one time. If you are using this one-time class to funnel, and that's why I have that word there, you really want people to kind of get a feel for you and hope that they love you and they want to sign up for these longer, bigger ticket items. So the multi-day classes, for example, are classes that during the school year I offer once a week for 4 or 5 or 6 weeks. And if it's a camp, and this is why there's 4 options, but multi-day kind of fits into 2, you can set it, it has to have at least 2 meetings. So if you are building on a topic, you are going to set it as a multi-day class. But if it's a camp, it's going to meet all together in 1 week. So for instance, I have a 4-day camp, I have a 5-day camp. It's going to meet Monday through Friday at the same time every day of just that week. If you prefer the one-time format, but you really want to start seeing those students weekly, you are going to sign up for the ongoing classes. And I offer ongoing classes almost exclusively now. I taught a ton of one-time classes over the summer. They were a great way to build up all those learners and get people to meet me. And then I started realizing that I loved seeing the students more often and getting to know them. And you really feel like you're part of a classroom then. And ongoing isn't charging parents for a huge chunk of money at the beginning. So a multi-day class, and I'll use just $10 as a figure. So let's say you're charging $10 per person per class. That means that if you offer it for 5 days, it's going to cost the parent $50 to sign up for your multi-day class. And then you get paid per learner. So depending on how many students you have in your class, you can set that a minimum of 1 or 3, whatever it is you want to set the minimum to. And the maximum can't go over 18, but that's really big. And Outschool does pride themselves in small class size. So my classes are never above 12, and that's for the older kids age range. And if it's younger, I go lower. But if your class is full and you're charging $10 per student and you get 10 students, that's technically $100 for that class. And I will go into the payment part of it later, but Outschool takes 30% of that. So you would be getting $70 to teach that one class. So you have to keep in mind whatever your minimum is. If you say your minimum is 1 student, you could technically only be getting paid $7 for that class if only 1 student enrolls, but you could also be making upwards of $70 per class. I'd say my average is closer to, it had been closer to 50 and it's now closer to 70. The longer I teach and the more students you keep on, as an ongoing basis, my classes are much more full. So with the ongoing classes, that is where you see them every week. You set your schedule and I see the same kids every Tuesday at 10 a.m. and they sign up. But if they're going on vacation, or maybe they could only fit it into a school break, they sign up and you might only see them one time. Or maybe they are there for a while and they skip a few weeks and then they come back. And so they're able to just drop in and drop out as they please. And it's really convenient for the parents, and they only get charged per week. So it's not a big chunk of money, because some people do semester long multi-day classes. So if they're charging for 20 weeks, that's a huge chunk of money up front. But if you're doing an ongoing class, then those parents are being charged weekly, and it's an automatic thing that happens with their credit card. And we don't have to take care of any of that. Outschool does all of that for us. The flexible schedule is something I'm starting to build up a little bit more. It is definitely not the bread and butter of my salary, but it is where you do the pre-recorded classes. It's the most passive option because everything else is live, but it's not completely passive because you do still have to have interaction with students. You are expected to include options for them to turn in their work and play games or have interaction with each other and with you. And it doesn't happen as often as you'd think. So it is pretty passive, but then you have some students that are very active. So I have a student right now that checks in with me every couple days, and they post their paintings in whatever step they're in, and I give them suggestions and encouragement. And, you know, I'm communicating with them either through messages or sometimes I'll upload a quick video. So it's very personal. So deciding what sells and when to schedule, really my experience, and when you read the forums and you see what other people are doing, you do tend to have more students enroll more frequently if they're younger. I love teaching the teenagers, and it's just a slower process to build them up. But once you have full classes that are the older kids, they are very loyal. So with my ongoing students, I've seen most of the same students since September, and it's now the end of May. So it's, don't think that just because you're a high school teacher, you're not going to make it. It's going to go slower though. Unique themes are important. So just because you teach a specific concept in math, or you're teaching grammar, and that's something that another teacher is definitely going to be teaching as well, that does not mean that it cannot be unique. You come up with your own themes, you come up with a fun spin on it, something that is going to draw those students to the way that you teach that concept. So I see people talking about how if everything's saturated and, what's the point, and not getting any learners. They need to just reevaluate their classes and figure out what makes their classes unique and what's going to make them stand out, because I don't feel like it's going to be oversaturated whenever people are looking for you and your personality, and you're able to teach in a way that just gives them a reason to come to your class. And then scheduling is another big topic. When is the best time to schedule? When do you get those full classes? And to be honest with you, I teach when I want to teach. So I am not a morning person and I am not a night owl. And if you are, that is going to give you international options. So I have fulfilled some requests. Like I had someone request that I teach a really early morning class so that their child from Australia could join. And it wasn't a full class, it was a small class, but I enjoyed teaching it. But I was able to teach it whenever my son went to school right away. I just got up and I came down and I taught, instead of doing my normal morning work that's more quiet, because I'm not usually ready to talk that early in the morning. But that gave them the time to take it in the evening when they were still awake, instead of when I'm teaching now, like midday, they're sleeping. So that is a way to build up your international following. If you would only want to teach after school or weekends, you can do that. I teach Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays midday. That's what has worked for me. Being on the East Coast, it gives the West Coast kids time to wake up. And I have students, for example, at noon, I will be teaching a student from Malta, a student from Oregon, a student from Florida. Like I'm trying to figure out where they all have said that they are from, but like from all the time zones from across the country to overseas, because at noon, I'm able to hit quite a bit. So it really depends on when you want to schedule. And just once you build that following, you'll get the students. Communication is important because you're building those relationships, and that's when you start seeing the students becoming more loyal to you. I have a student that used to take private lessons in person, and then she wasn't able to, and Outschool classes became that alternative for her, and she isn't going back to the private students or private lessons because she is enjoying my painting classes so much. So we have had a lot of conversations back and forth. I feel like I've built that reputation with her. I have definitely communicated with the parent a lot, and their form of communication is a lot like email. It's not as intuitive as, say, Google or anything like that, but they have made huge strides and a lot of improvements since I started. So you are able to message parents specifically, you are able to message the student, and the parent will see that message. So keep that in mind, that you're communicating with both of them. You can get schedule requests from parents and communicate back to them about that, whether you're able to offer it at the time that they're requesting. And I always make sure I reach out to them. If I put up a class during the time they requested, I don't just blindly put up the class. I always message them and let them know, hey, I'm so glad you requested this class. Thank you so much. This is what I was able to offer. I hope it works out. And occasionally there might be a little bit of a back and forth, like, oh, that day didn't end up working out or whatever, but you usually get them in your class. If you don't hear from them, it's not the end of the world. You did create a class based on their recommended or their request of a schedule, but typically I do see that pan out. And then classroom messages are right there in each individual classroom where you see the learners' names, and you're able to post an announcement to them. Or for instance, I was on vacation for a few days and I just put in a reminder that I wouldn't be there this week because it was an ongoing class and I didn't want them to try to log on and me not be there, even though I told them the week before. I use that classroom message board just to be very clear in my communication. When they, oh, I forgot that this is sort of important too. When they sign up for a class, when you're developing your class description, at the very bottom, there's a welcome message. And they have a little predetermined sentence or two in there. You want to change that and make that personal, because when they actually enroll, that gets sent to their email. So they want to feel welcomed, and you can give them any information they need so that they come to class prepared. So my teacher dashboard, this is a little behind the scenes of what you would see. You can see how many sections of classes you're offering, how many different classes I have, what the re-enrollment rate is. I don't put much stock in this number because I teach ongoing classes, and you only have your students show up once. So meaning, like, my students had taken a class before and then they enrolled in a second class, but even though I see them every single week, that doesn't contribute to the percentage. It's only showing that you've seen a student more than once, so 16% of my students I've seen more than once. Your average star rating, and we'll go into the reviews in a little bit, is based off of a 5-star review system where the parents can give you a star and leave you feedback. And then the followers are who is saving you, like your profile as a teacher. And then you can see learners taught here. I've taught 1,400 students, but again, this number isn't counting the fact that I've seen the same students since September every single week. So it's not like they count that in, or this number would be astronomical. So I have taught 1,443 individual students overall. And then it gives you your upcoming classes, and you can see your schedule. You can see every single class you're offering and click on those individually. Whatever you put into your profile information when you apply shows up there. Your availability means that you can set it so that you can have times just open. If you want a parent to just schedule a class whenever it's convenient for them, you can. I am very selfish with my schedule, and I would like to control when I'm working and when I'm not. And so mine is turned off, and they can request a class. And if it fits into my schedule, I will add it. And then stats shows you what you've earned, how many students and how you've taught, and how many hours you've taught for each month. So whenever you go into each class, you're able to see how many saves you've had for that specific class. So this one, my ongoing drawing class for the 7 to 10-year-olds, I've had 78 saves for that particular class. I have a section that's meeting now, and I have 8 students out of 10 available spots. And I also am pausing my ongoing classes for the summer because I can't offer it as consistently, because some of the in-person camps that I normally teach are coming back to life. And I am going to be offering camps and one-time classes instead. So this means that I have rescheduled my ongoing class to start again at the beginning of September. Just like I ran it all school year this year, I'll run it during the school year next year. And I put a notice in the classroom, and I already have one of the students that's in this class enrolled for next year, because she knows she's going to be homeschooling, and she knows that this was going to be her art elective. So the followers here are who's following you as a teacher and your profile, and the saves are how many people have saved a specific class. The other nice thing is, whoever is following you, when you develop a new class, Outschool will be sending them an email letting them know. So for instance, I have some students who are not into the ongoing class format, or it doesn't fit into their schedule, whatever it is, but they're teenagers that like my painting classes. And every time that I offer a new painting class, they're the first to sign up because they have received a notification because they follow me. So 4 main things that happen during class that I wanted to just give you a heads up on about troubleshooting, so that you're not like a huge form of tech support, but there are things that happen between either your computer or their devices that can be easily fixed. So sound is the top one for sure, where either the students can't hear you or you can't hear them. And if they can't hear me, you can communicate through chat to work it out. You always ask them to check their Zoom settings or check your own Zoom settings. Asking them to leave the classroom and rejoining and you admitting them again fixes the problem most of the time. And the other problem is usually their headphones just aren't plugged in the whole way if they are using a headset or earbuds or something. So that is usually easily fixed. The video typically is because of a poor connection, and they can either turn their video off during class, and that helps them have better sound, or occasionally they'll come in and their screen is black, where it's not just black because they haven't turned their video on, it's black like without even their name showing. And again, that's usually fixed when they leave the classroom and rejoin, or there's a little arrow next to the video section at the bottom left corner of it, and they're able to like look at their settings within that area. But it is required that they do a video check-in. They don't have to stay on video during class, but I'd say the majority of them do actually. The older they get, the less you see their faces, but the more comfortable they feel with you, the more you see them. Typically, they're on video, which is really nice. It can glitch. So occasionally you'll become robotic, or they'll become robotic, or like just freeze halfway through speaking, or their video just isn't very good in general. Usually means it's just a poor connection on either end. And this is where I was talking about, I don't let my kids stream anything so that it's not interfering with my internet connection. And whenever I move my office, we made sure to hardwire the internet connection in, so I'll be able to actually reach that and eliminate these glitches altogether. And then if you have two devices, which of course you don't have to, you do get some feedback if things aren't muted properly. So you just want to make sure that one of your devices is the one that you're going to be talking through, and the other one is fully muted, not just muted in Zoom, but the actual device is muted. Otherwise, you get this really horrible reverberation. So I discussed the reviews where parents are able to leave you reviews. And because as a teacher, I'm used to having evaluations, you have the principal come in and do an evaluation or a walkthrough, and you always are rated anyway. This to me is not a big deal, but I know to some people it is. I think I've just developed a thick skin over the years too. Being an artist, we've always in studio classes had to complete critiques, which is not necessarily like something that's negative, when you think of the word critic or to be critiqued, it's more there, you're getting peer feedback and you are taking suggestions and then able to make changes to your art. So to me, a review is sort of, I look at it as I can make an improvement that a parent saw, maybe there was something that they had an expectation for that was in my class description, and did I not quite meet that? Sometimes they just don't read the description very well, and you have covered whatever they say was missing, or their child was having a bad day that one day. One time I had a parent give me a 1 star, and I also had a 5 star in the same exact class. So in those instances, if you get a review that is not up to par, and yes, it stings, but at the same time, I realized no matter what I said, this woman was not going to change her mind. I provided an experience that was just horrible for her daughter. She left class crying. I saw none of that. Her daughter did not cry during class. I don't know where it came from, but I was able to reply back, and you can reply privately or publicly. It's something that I highly suggest you give some time to think about it and think about, is it worth replying back? I like to just connect with parents in this way, even if they're giving 5 star reviews. If they just give me the stars, I don't reply back. But if they have taken the time to write something, I always thank them, or let them know about something that happened in class that was great with their student, especially whenever they've taken the time to take a picture of their artwork and post it. That's always nice. If you reply back publicly, the parents don't see that though. So I always reply privately, because then they receive a message. I don't know why it works that way. I think they should receive a message either way, but as of right now, that's how it works. So you do get an average, and people are like, oh, I got a 3 star and it just dropped my whole average. And it's, how can I bring it up? And you want people to leave reviews. Outschool does send parents the emails, but you just don't get that high of a percentage of reviews compared to how many students you teach. It just depends if the parents are willing to take the time to do that. So I don't reach out and ask for reviews personally, because Outschool already does it. So here we are at payment. Outschool's cut is 30%, which some people think is very high. I'm okay with it because they're doing the advertising for me. I would never teach students internationally. I would never have received 1,400 students and ones that I'm keeping throughout the school year without Outschool doing this for me. It would cost me just as much in time and money myself. I know it would. So you want to value your time and charge something accordingly. So I started off because when I was new and they recommended $10 to $15 per hour, I started at $10. When I saw that I was filling classes, I upped it to 12. Throughout a few months of that, when I was still filling classes, I kept upping it $1 until now I'm at 14 per hour per student. So that averages out, if you're doing $10 per student, you're making that $7 instead, and that's before taxes. So when you submit your taxes, you have to remember that you do need to set aside your own money to pay the taxes if you're going to owe. They pay you through PayPal, and each class has their own like pay schedule. So it is a little hard to keep track of, and I'm very organized in a written planner about this, but you can keep track of it on QuickBooks. We use something called Wave for our businesses. But anyway, it is where they pay you 1 week. Like if it's an ongoing class, it is, let's see, the second Sunday past the day you taught it. So every Sunday now, because I teach every week, I'm able to get that money in just directly deposited into my PayPal account. If it's a one-time class, you get paid 1 week after the day you taught. So it's all sporadic and all kind of comes in at different times. If it's a flexible schedule class, it's after the class has been running for 1 week is when you get paid. So it's important to just keep track and make sure that you know how many students you taught. And when you're getting paid, I check off that it's correct. And I've yet to have any discrepancies actually. And then you want to make sure you're setting it so that you stand or transfer it through like a standard bank transfer so that PayPal doesn't take any cuts or any percentages out of it either. So it'll transfer into your bank account within 1 to 3 business days. So that's a lot of information in a short amount of time. I hope that I was able to just at least alleviate any reservations you had about teaching on Outschool if it was something you were considering doing. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as at amy.roadman.art. I have a website, amyroadman.com, and I'd be happy to help you out in any way I can. I do plan on having some sort of mini course or intensive where I am helping teachers because I feel like I didn't have the help because I didn't know any Outschool teachers when I started. So I ingested so many YouTube videos and so much of the information on all of the Facebook. They do have a lot of helpful Facebook groups, but it took me a long time to figure everything out. And so I'm hoping that this helps do that for you. And I'm going to be offering some classes in order to just alleviate some of that nervousness that I know I had whenever I first started. So thank you.